I want you to just close your eyes for a second, assuming you're not driving, of course.
Right. Please keep your eyes open if you're behind the wheel.
Exactly. But if you can, just picture something with me. Picture a totally dark screen, and slowly, out of that absolute pitch black, this incredibly iconic image fades in.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah, it's that bright sky blue wallpaper with the puffy white clouds, you know, the exact one, Andy's room.
It's burned into the cultural memory at this point.
Totally. But right in the center of those clouds, there isn't a fully fleshed out, colorful, smiling cowboy toy. Instead, there's just a 3D wireframe model of Woody.
Just the skeleton, basically.
Right, just a hollow mesh of these digital intersecting green lines. He's spinning slowly in the center of the screen. And in the background, you don't hear Randy Newman singing.
No, you hear something much more stressful.
You hear this sound, this heavy mechanical hum of early 1990s computer fans, just spinning at absolute maximum capacity.
And probably that frantic, clicking, synthetic heartbeat of processors that are just pushed to the absolute brink.
Yes. It's such an evocative image. It's almost unsettling.
It really is. And I mean, it perfectly captures the physical reality of what we're digging into today, because that wasn't just a movie being made. That was a machine literally trying not to catch fire.
Exactly. That spinning wireframe almost bankrupted an entire company. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at the 43,000-hour computational nightmare that was the original 1995 release of Toy Story.
It's a miracle it ever came out.
It really is. We are going to completely unpack the grueling, against all odds, and honestly terrifying production history of this movie.
Which is a lot darker than people realize.
Oh, way darker. We're going to look at just how close this beloved classic came to completely imploding and the sheer human grit it took to drag it across the finish line.
But we're also going to do something a little different today.
We are. We're going to do something a little dangerous. We're going to conduct a massive, mind-bending, hypothetical experiment.
I love this part.
Right. So we're going to take the exact creative challenge of 1991, but we are going to rip out those humming, struggling early 90s computers.
Just toss them out the window.
Gone. And we are going to hand that exact same 1991 Pixar team the generative AI tools of today. Like, what happens to a masterpiece if you remove all the pain of creating it?
I mean, it fundamentally changes the nature of the entire endeavor. You go from a desperate technical scramble to this really deep philosophical question about the nature of art itself.
Exactly that.
But, you know, to really grasp how AI reshapes this narrative, we first have to ground ourselves in the sheer, unadulterated terror of the 1991 reality.
Terror is a good word for it. Let's set the stage.
Yeah, so in 1991, Pixar was not the animation titan, the household name we think of today. Not even close.
They were basically a startup, right?
Pretty much. They were essentially this small, struggling hardware and software company trying to figure out what their actual business model was.
Like, who were they even selling to at that point?
They were selling these ultra-expensive computers that mostly, like, hospitals and government agencies bought to render high-res images. Medical scans, stuff like that.
Wow. Okay, so not exactly the entertainment industry.
No, not at all. And yet, sitting in that precarious financial position, they somehow signed a contract with Disney.
The ultimate titan of animation. And this is right in the middle of the Disney Renaissance,
A
right?
little smack in the middle.
I mean, they're coming off The Little Mermaid. They're working on Beauty and the Beast. Traditional 2D hand-drawn animation is just making billions of dollars.
Exactly. And Disney hands this tiny, struggling tech company what was, frankly, an impossible mission.
Which was?
To create the world's first feature-length, entirely computer-animated movie.
We're talking about 80 full minutes of digital imagery.
Yeah.
I mean, when you really think about the technology of 1991, signing up to make an 80-minute CGI movie sounds insane.
It does.
It sounds less like a creative project and more like a high-altitude mountaineering expedition where nobody has checked the weather and nobody even knows if the mountain actually has a summit.
That's a perfect analogy, because the aesthetic was entirely unproven for a feature film.
Like, people hadn't seen it before.
Right. We take it for granted now, but back then, nobody knew if audiences would even sit through 80 minutes of digital imagery.
Because it might look weird.
Well, yeah. Short films and commercials were one thing, but a feature requires real emotional investment. Audiences were used to the warmth of hand-drawn cells.
The classic Disney magic.
Exactly. So there was a legitimate fear that CGI would feel cold, sterile, and just completely alienating for an hour and a half.
I can see that. But it wasn't just the audience they were worried about.
Oh, no. Beyond the audience reception, there was a foundational existential physical threat.
When was that?
They honestly didn't even know if their computers would physically survive the attempt.
Wait, really? The machines might just die.
Literally. They were pushing processing limits to a point where hardware failure wasn't some hypothetical risk. It was a legitimate daily fear.
Wow.
They were asking machines built for rendering single static scientific images to spit out 24 frames of complex, lit, textured emotional resonance every single second.
Okay, we need to completely unpack this timeline of pain. Because, to really get the impact of our AI thought experiment later, we need to feel the intense friction of 1991.
Yes, the friction is everything.
Right. The baseline reality here is that the creative process was entirely manual, incredibly precarious, and just almost comically difficult.
And it started where every movie starts, right? With the
Yeah,
story.
exactly. And here is where the reality of this production gets genuinely wild. Because when they signed that deal in 1991, Woody, the beating heart of this entire franchise, was not the lovable, fiercely loyal cowboy we all know.
Not even close. I mean, the original concepts were drastically fundamentally different.
Okay, brace yourself if you're listening to this.
Yeah.
They originally had Woody as a mean, sarcastic ventriloquist dummy.
It's hard to even picture.
Let that sink in. A mean ventriloquist dummy. Just visually, before we even get to the personality, a ventriloquist dummy is already absolute nightmare fuel.
Visually and culturally, yes. I mean, a ventriloquist dummy already carries a certain eerie, almost sinister cultural baggage.
Right, like every scary movie ever.
Exactly. Think of every horror anthology from the Twilight Zone onward. They are inherently creepy.
So why on earth would you make him the hero?
Well, they compounded that visual unease by making his personality actively mean and sarcastic. He was written to be this tyrannical boss to the other toys, verbally abusive, and just wildly selfish.
But why? Why would anyone think that was a good idea for a kid's movie?
It was a reaction to the cultural moment. You really have to remember the animation landscape of the early 90s.
Okay, paint a picture for me.
Well, The Simpsons had just exploded onto the scene, right? And they proved that animation could be cynical, edgy, and for adults.
Oh, true. They didn't have to just be fairy tales.
Exactly. So Disney was actually pushing Pixar to give the movie more edge, to make it appealing to adults, not just a standard fairy tale.
They wanted that buddy cop dynamic.
Right, but they pushed the cynicism way too far. I mean, when you make your protagonist that acerbic and cruel, it becomes incredibly difficult for an audience to root for them.
Especially when the medium itself, early CGI, already risks feeling emotionally cold.
Spot on. You're giving them a cold medium and a cold character. It's a disaster.
It's like reading a rough first draft of a novel that you wrote at 2 a.m. The kind of thing you want to bury in the backyard and hide from everyone, including yourself.
We've all been there.
Yeah. But here is the critical difference between live action and what Pixar was attempting.
Yeah.
Because in normal live action filmmaking, if you realize a few weeks into production that your main character is coming off a bit too harsh, you have options.
You can pivot.
Right. You pull the actor aside, you change the line delivery, you might do some reshoots on a Tuesday, change the lighting to soften the mood, and you just fix the pacing in the edit room.
It happens all the time.
Exactly. But in early 3D animation, the cost of a mistake like our main character is fundamentally unlikable is astronomically higher.
Oh, vastly higher. You couldn't just fix it in post. That wasn't a thing.
Oh, no.
Because in 1992, every single frame of animation was a massive, bleeding-edge investment of human labor and computing power.
Like you couldn't just quickly redo a scene.
No, you had animators manually calculating the movement of a digital puppet on a screen that might take minutes just to refresh a simple wireframe preview.
Minutes just for the wireframe. Wow.
Yes. So to throw away completed animation because the character's tone was wrong wasn't just a creative setback, it was a financial catastrophe.
And this exact issue, this mean, cynical, tyrannical, ventriloquist dummy Woody, is what triggered the event that is famously referred to internally as Black Friday.
Just a chillin' name.
It really is.
Right.
The name Black Friday sounds like an apocalyptic horror movie. Walk us through exactly what went down in 1993.
So, it was November 1993. The Pixar team flew down to Burbank to screen a rough cut of the first half of the film for the Disney executives.
Okay, and this is a big deal.
Huge. This was supposed to be a triumphant progress report, a victory lap. Instead, they watched the reels, which heavily featured this mean-spirited version of Woody actively insulting the other toys and being generally unlikable.
And how did the Disney folks react?
The Disney executives, including the head of feature animation at the time, absolutely hated it.
Oh man, how bad was the reaction really?
They halted production entirely.
Wait, they just stopped the movie.
Completely. They deemed the entire thing unwatchable.
Unwatchable. That is the literal word they used. Just picture the panic in that room.
And this has been terrifying.
Right. You are a struggling software company. You finally get your one shot with the biggest, most powerful animation studio on planet Earth. 2 years into the deal, the executives hit the emergency stop button because your main character is a jerk.
And your company's survival is tied to this one movie.
Yeah, the stakes were ultimate.
A production halt from a studio like Disney is very rarely just a pause. It is almost always a death sentence for a project.
Because everyone just moves on.
Exactly. The crew is reassigned, the funding dries up, and the concept gets locked in a vault somewhere forever.
So how did they survive?
Well, this catastrophic failure leads to one of the most crucial pivots in cinematic history. John Lasseter, the director, basically begged for a reprieve.
He went to bat for it.
He did. He asked Disney for just 2 weeks, which eventually turned into a 3-month hiatus, just to completely tear down and rewrite the script from scratch.
Think about what a massive ask that is. Hey, I know you hate this, I know it's unwatchable, and I know we are bleeding millions of dollars, but please, keep funding us for 3 more months so we can start the story over.
It takes serious guts.
But I want to dig into why this complete halt was so absolutely vital. If they were bleeding money, why not just try to tweak the dialogue while the animators kept working on other, background scenes?
Because the medium simply didn't allow for simultaneous problem solving. Yeah, the immense financial and technical friction of actually animating this 80-minute movie meant they couldn't afford to animate even a single minute of a flawed story.
Because it'd just be throwing money into a furnace.
Right. In live action, you can shoot coverage. You can shoot a scene from 5 different angles and decide later in the edit bay which one works best.
Oh, right. You have options.
But in 1993 computer animation, you only shot what you absolutely knew was going into the final film, because every single second of footage was agonizing to produce.
It's the ultimate measure twice, cut once scenario.
Exactly.
The friction of the medium forced them to ensure the story was absolutely structurally perfect on paper, in storyboards, before they dared to touch the computers.
The technological limitations of 1993 acted as this merciless quality control mechanism for the narrative.
It forced them to be good.
Yes, because the animation process was so agonizingly slow and so punishingly expensive, the script had to be bulletproof. They couldn't hide behind flashy, easy visual effects to distract the audience from a bad plot.
Like a lot of movies do today.
Exactly. The core character dynamics, the emotional arcs, the humor, it all had to work flawlessly on a static storyboard first, or it wasn't getting animated.
So they use that time, they rewrite the script. Woody becomes the flawed but fiercely loyal, deeply relatable cowboy we know today.
The icon.
Right. And Buzz becomes the deluded but noble space ranger. They lock in that bulletproof script, and then they enter what the production timeline actually calls the grind.
And it was a grind.
This is from 1994 to 1995.
Oh.
And the manpower contrast during this phase is staggering. I want you, listening to this, to really hold these numbers in your head.
They're hard to believe.
They really are. For Toy Story, the team pushing the absolute limits of technology to invent a new art form was incredibly tiny. They had a total of 110 people on the entire project. That's management, tech support, everyone.
A skeleton crew.
But the core animation team, the actual artists manipulating the digital puppets to bring Woody and Buzz to life frame by frame, just 27 people.
27 individuals shouldering an unprecedented technical and artistic burden.
To emphasize just how wild that is, let's contrast it directly with traditional 2D animation happening at the exact same time.
Okay, let's look at Disney.
Right. Disney is making The Lion King. How many artists were working on Simba? Over 800.
800 artists. And they were drawing and painting cells backed by decades of established workflow and institutional knowledge.
Exactly. 800 artists with pencils and paper versus 27 people trying to invent 3D feature animation on computers that, as we established, might literally overheat and fail at any moment.
It just highlights the sheer grit required. I mean, those 27 people weren't just animating, they were discovering the language of computer animation as they were speaking it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if an animator working on The Lion King wants to know how to draw a lion walking, They can look back at decades of Disney reference material. They have books on
Oh,
it.
right, they have Bambi, they have the Jungle Book.
Exactly. But if a Pixar animator in 1994 wanted to know how a plastic jointed space ranger conveys subtle jealousy through his digital eyebrows,
There's no textbook for that.
there was zero reference. They had to define how weight, gravity, emotion, and texture translated into a completely new mathematical space.
Okay, so we've established the intense human and creative constraints. The story was a high-wire act where one misstep meant cancellation. The team was microscopic compared to the industry standard. The pressure was crushing.
It was a pressure cooker.
But we need to transition from the human cost to the physical constraints. Let's say John Lasseter fixed the script. Let's say Woody is perfect.
Okay, the story works.
Let's say those 27 animators figure out exactly how to make him act. How do they actually get this 80-minute digital file out of the computers and onto a piece of film that a movie theater can actually project?
This brings us to what is aptly named the 1995 computational nightmare.
I love that name.
It's accurate because the human effort, the late nights, the carpal tunnel, that is only half the story. The physical, mathematical reality of rendering the...
We have to dive into the math of rendering,
Let's do it.
because the numbers here are absolutely bonkers. To make this 80-minute movie, the film required rendering exactly 114,240 individual frames of animation.
And we really must define exactly what rendering meant in this context, because it's not just hitting save.
Right? It's not like exporting a Word document.
Not at all. Rendering is the process where the computer takes all the mathematical data the animator inputted, so the positions of the characters, the layout of the room, everything, and calculates all the physics of the scene for a single static image.
Break that down for me. What physics is the computer calculating?
Primarily, it's calculating light, specifically a process often involving ray tracing or complex shading algorithms.
Okay, give me a visual.
Imagine a scene in Andy's room. The sun is shining through the window. The computer has to calculate a beam of light coming through the glass, hitting Woody's plastic face.
Okay.
But light doesn't just hit and stop, it bounces. So the computer calculates that light bouncing off Woody's face, picking up a slight flesh tone hue, and then hitting the wooden floorboards.
Oh.
And then it has to cast a specific shadow based on Woody's exact geometry. It has to calculate how light reacts to Buzz's transparent plastic helmet versus his matte finished chest plate.
That's a ton of math.
It's unbelievable. And it has to do this mathematical calculation for every single pixel, for every single light source, for every single frame.
And there are 114,240 frames. So what was the speed of 1995 technology? Like, if I hit render on one of those frames, how long am I waiting?
To compute just one of those 114,240 frames, it took anywhere from 45 minutes for a very simple shot up to 30 hours for a complex scene.
Wait, per frame?
A frame?
30 hours for a single frame.
Yes. For a complex scene, a single computer could spend over a full day and a half processing just 124th of a second of film.
I have to stop right there. How do you even function as a professional?
Barely, I imagine.
Think about how annoyed you, the listener, get when a 5-second YouTube video buffers for, like, 3 seconds. You lose your minds.
We have zero patience today.
None. Now imagine staring at a machine knowing it is going to take 30 hours to give you 124th of a second of a cartoon.
It's agonizing.
As an animator, your entire job is timing. It's visual feedback. You need to see if a movement looks natural. How do you do your job knowing that you have to wait days just to see if a shadow falls correctly across a wall?
Or if a piece of plastic hair on a toy looks right on screen.
Yes. If you make a tweak on Monday, you don't find out if it looks terrifying till Thursday.
Exactly. It required a level of foresight and mathematical precision from those artists that is almost extinct today.
They had to be visionaries.
They couldn't rely on real-time visual feedback at all. They were animating blind, essentially.
How does it even work?
Well, they worked in wireframe mode, just those green lines we talked about at the start, which the computer could display relatively quickly.
Right.
But they had to deeply understand the underlying math and geometry of the software to know that what they were doing in wireframe would translate perfectly once the lighting and textures were applied days later.
That is insane.
They were blindly trusting that their inputs would yield the correct output. It was a process of extreme delayed gratification and immense hair-pulling frustration.
So if a single frame takes up to 30 hours, you obviously can't just use one computer. To handle this, Pixar had to build what they called the render farm.
The legendary render farm.
And when you look at archival footage of this, we aren't talking about a sleek, quiet server rack tucked away in a closet. We were talking about physical, industrial-scale infrastructure.
They dedicated entire rooms to this. Massive rooms.
Rooms packed with 117 bulky, heavy, dual-processor workstations. These were massive machines from companies like Silicon Graphics and Sun Microsystems.
Not your average desktop PCs.
No, just rows and rows and rows of these giant beige plastic cases. And because these machines were running at 100% capacity, 247, trying to do all this math, the physical environment was intense.
It was a literal farm of computational power. I mean, the heat generated by 117 processors running constantly was massive.
Like an oven.
Exactly. They had to install these massive industrial air conditioning units just to keep the room from physically melting down.
I can't even imagine the power bill.
And the noise was deafening. It was an incredibly expensive, physically imposing manifestation of the technological hurdle they were trying to clear.
And here's the mind-blowing perspective. This is the ultimate contextualizing fact of this entire production. You ready for this?
Hit me.
If you didn't have that hot, loud room of 117 computers, if you tried to render the entirety of Toy Story All, 114,240 frames, on just a single 1995 computer, do you know how long it would have taken?
Oh, I know the math. It's 43,000 hours.
43,000 hours. If you hit enter on a single machine, you would have to come back almost 5 years later to watch your movie.
It is absurd.
It's hilarious. You start rendering when your kid is born, and it's finished by the time they start kindergarten.
And it better be right on the first try.
Right. And yet, through sheer force of will, they did it. They wrangled the math, they fought the heat, and they made the movie. But we have to make the modern contrast because it really twists the knife on how hard they worked.
Yes. To truly understand the friction of 1995, we have to look at the device you, listening right now, likely have in your pocket, or maybe the device you're literally using to listen to this audio.
With a smartphone.
The total aggregated computing power used by that entire roaring room of 117 Silicon Graphics workstations to render this historic, groundbreaking film is fundamentally less than what sits inside a cheap modern smartphone today.
Less than a smartphone. Let that sink in.
It's wild.
All that heat, all those roaring air conditioners, all those 30-hour waits for a single frame, all of it is entirely outclassed by a thin rectangle of glass that we primarily use to send emojis, doom scroll social media, and order takeout.
It's a sobering realization about exponential technological growth.
It really is.
But it also perfectly sets the stage for the core thought experiment of this discussion. We've established the agonizing 4-year timeline. We've established the 43,000-hour rendering math. We intimately understand the sheer crushing friction of 1995.
So what does this all mean when we change the variables? Let's step into the realm of what if. Let's fire up the time machine.
Let's do it.
What happens if we take John Lasseter and his core team of 27 exhausted animators in 1991, but instead of those beige Silicon Graphics machines, we hand them the generative AI tools of today?
We're essentially rewriting history.
We're removing all the friction.
We're looking at a complete paradigm shift in production pipelines. It's not just doing things faster. It's a fundamental change in how things are created. Let's break this down phase by phase, starting with phase 1, concept and storyboarding.
Okay, let's look at the 1995 reality for concepting first. It was months of manual physical labor.
Lots of pencils and paper.
Right. You had hand-drawn sketches. You had massive physical pin boards covering the walls of the studio, filled with hundreds of drawings, just trying to figure out what Buzz Lightyear's spacesuit should look like or what kind of wallpaper Andy should have.
Very labor-intensive.
If they wanted to see Woody in a different hat, an artist had to literally sit down and draw Woody in a different hat from 5 different angles.
Now, contrast that manual labor with the modern AI hypothesis. We introduced diffusion models, tools like Midjourney, DALL-E, or Stable Diffusion.
These are everywhere right now.
Yes, but we need to understand the mechanism here. How does a diffusion model actually work? It doesn't draw like a human.
Right, it's not a tiny artist in the computer.
Exactly. It starts with an image of pure static, pure digital noise, and it iteratively subtracts that noise based on the patterns it learned from millions of human images until it forms what you asked for.
So instead of a team of artists spending weeks drafting variations of a character,
Right.
What does that process look like?
A single artist or director can type a natural language prompt. A 3D render of a cowboy toy, slightly cynical but friendly, made of hand-stitched fabric and plastic, cinematic lighting.
And then what?
And within 10 seconds, the AI generates not 1, but 4 high-fidelity variations.
10 seconds.
Yes. You want to see Woody as that mean ventriloquist dummy? Type it in. Boom. 50 terrifying variations in a minute. You want to see him as a 1950s astronaut? Boom, another 50. It's instantaneous, boundless brainstorming.
That is just, it's a 70% time savings in the conceptual phase alone, 70% faster, just to figure out what things look like.
Huge.
But, once you know what they look like, you have to actually build them in the computer.
Yeah.
Which brings us to phase 2, asset and prop modeling. And this is where the time savings get even crazier.
Oh, absolutely. Because in 1995, building the digital world was an exercise in extreme, almost monastic tedium.
Tedium's the right word.
They weren't just drawing 3D objects. They were building every toy, every floorboard, every screw on a bed frame, every background book on a shelf, vertex by vertex.
I always marvel at that phrase, building a screw vertex by vertex. For those who don't dabble in 3D modeling, what exactly does that mean? A vertex is just a mathematical point in 3D space, right? Like plotting coordinates on a graph.
Exactly. A 3D model is essentially a mesh made of thousands of tiny polygons, usually triangles or squares.
Okay.
The corners of those polygons are vertices. So to build a 3D screw, an artist in 1995 had to manually define the mathematical coordinates for the points that make up the curve of the screw's threads, the indentation of the Phillips head.
Oh my God.
It was digital sculpting at the microscopic mathematical level, requiring immense time and precision for an object that might be out of focus in the background for literally 2 seconds.
It's insane. It's so much work for so little payoff. But what is the modern AI alternative?
We moved to text-to-3D pipelines. You don't build the screw vertex by vertex anymore.
Thank goodness.
Right. You bypass the manual plotting entirely. You use a natural language prompt to generate a fully textured base mesh.
So you just ask for it.
Yes. You tell the AI, generate a high-poly 3D model of a worn, slightly rusted Phillips head screw, and the AI, having analyzed the geometry of thousands of screws, simply hallucinates the 3D geometry and the rust texture instantly.
It just makes it an 80% speed increase.
Yeah.
You are effectively eliminating the manual labor of world building. You don't build Andy's room, you summon it into existence.
Summoning is a great way to put it.
But here is the critical transition. Because once you have that fully generated AI model of a screw or a cowboy or a space ranger,
Yeah.
it's completely useless if it just sits there frozen like a statue.
Very true.
That was the next massive hurdle, making the move. Which brings us to phase 3, animation and rigging. And this is where the soul of the character actually comes in.
Right. And the 1995 reality here was the manual keyframing of every joint. Let's talk about rigging first.
What is a rig?
A 3D model is just a hollow shell. To make it move, you have to build a rig inside it. A rig is essentially a digital skeleton made of joints and mathematical weights.
Okay, that makes sense.
You have to tell the computer, if this elbow joint bends, the plastic mesh of the arm needs to deform exactly this much. Doing that manually for every character is a massive, highly technical bottleneck.
And once it's rigged, the animator actually has to move it. If Woody reaches out to grab his hat, an animator in 1995 had to tell the computer exactly how the shoulder rotates at frame 1, then how it rotates at frame 10, then the elbow, then the wrist, then each individual finger.
It is an incredibly granular, tedious process.
But with modern AI.
With modern AI, we introduced generative video motion transfer and AI-assisted auto-rigging nodes.
Okay, auto-rigging. How does that work?
With auto-rigging, you basically feed the AI the static 3D mesh of Woody. The AI analyzes the geometry, recognizes, okay, this looks humanoid, and automatically builds the skeleton, places the joints perfectly, and assigns the mathematical weights in seconds.
So like that.
It saves weeks of technical setup.
And what about the animation itself? The motion transfer?
Generative motion transfer means you could potentially record a human actor, say Tom Hanks acting out a scene in a sound booth.
Oh, this is cool.
The AI analyzes the video of Tom Hanks, tracks his skeletal movement, tracks the micro-expressions on his face, the subtle shifts in his weight, and translates that nuance directly onto the digital rig of Woody.
It's basically digital puppetry on hyperdrive. You aren't animating frame by frame, you are capturing human performance and instantly pasting it onto a cartoon.
It speeds up the process by 60%.
But wait, I have to push back here. Because anyone who has actually played with these modern AI tools knows it's not always pure magic.
That's fair.
Isn't there an assumption here that the AI gives you exactly what you want on the first try? If you use motion transfer, and the AI makes Woody's elbow bend backward grotesquely, which AI loves to do, don't you still have to go in and manually fix those keyframes? Doesn't prompt wrangling just become a new kind of bottleneck?
There's a very valid critique. AI is often 90% magic and 10% frustrating cleanup. It gets you a rough draft almost instantly, but refining the last 10% to Pixar-level perfection still requires a human hand. However, even with that cleanup, you are skipping the terrifying blank canvas stage. You are starting from a fully moving, textured foundation.
Fair enough. You're still saving massive amounts of time. So we have our concepts, our models, our animation, but we still have to bake the cake.
You have to render it.
Exactly. Phase 4. Rendering reimagined. I want to ask you to rerun that 43,000-hour math